Wow, aren't we lucky to have heard that original recording of a man losing his favourite button from his jacket in 1504. Remarkable stuff. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the final couplet with me, Theo Cowan. Hope you've all had a nice week. What did I do this week? Well, someone invited me on to their podcast. Well, sort of podcast, sort of interview type thing. A friend of mine called Alex Batt. And he'll release that, I think, next week. And it's me just talking about how I got this podcast started and why the hell I'm doing it. So if you, for some reason, want to listen to more of my voice, I'll let you know when that comes out and maybe put a link or something to that. It's an interesting chat about making your own podcast and also, of course, about Shakespeare and other ideas I might have in the future. So that's maybe something to listen to if you feel like it. But on to the episode. Today we're looking at Sonnet 95. Wow, we're nearly 100. Good grief. The last few sonnets have been quite spicy, I think. Quite fun to read and dissect. So hopefully it continues in that way with Sonnet 95. But 94 was all about sort of Shakespeare's lover maybe having an affair and going behind his back, and Shakespeare being a bit annoyed about that, obviously. And references to flowers turning into weeds and whatnot. Let's take a listen to Sonnet 95. How sweet and lovely dost thou make the shame which, like a canker in the fragrant rose, doth spot the beauty of thy budding name. Oh, in what sweets dost thou thy sins enclose! That tongue that tells the story of thy days, making lascivious comments on thy sport, cannot dispraise but in a kind of praise. Naming thy name blesses an ill report. Oh, what a mansion have those vices got, which for their habitation chose out thee, where beauty's veil doth cover every blot, and all things turns to fair that eyes can see. Take heed, dear heart, of this large privilege. The hardest knife, ill used, doth lose his edge. Wow, so there we have it, Sonnet 95. And good to hear that Shakespeare is still talking about his lover's deceit and cheating and two-facedness. He's not letting go, is he? He's not giving up on it. Which you've got respect in a way. You know, one thing that you can say about Shakespeare is he does drive a point home. If he latches onto something, he will deliver continuously. Sometimes for 20 or so sonnets, he will drive that point home. You know, if this was me and that was my partner, cheating and whatnot, I'd say, look, I don't think you should do that. That's not good. It's not good to do. I don't like it. And other people don't like it as well. But I don't know if I'd write so many sonnets about it. I'd probably just nip it in the bud. Probably just go, not for me, this relationship. You're a bit toxic and I've said my piece. See you later. Let's part ways. But Shakespeare obviously clearly loves this guy a lot and just needs to sort of, almost like he needs to reform him. There's also references to his lover being sweet, having sort of a sweet exterior and duping people. And he's talked about that in previous sonnets. Maybe 10 sonnets ago or something like that. He was talking about his lover having this sweet smile that duped a lot of people. And he's back at it here. He's saying, look, you're lovely. You present really lovely. And everyone thinks you're great, even though you're actually doing some pretty horrific things. But I think we should break this down line by line and work out what the hell Shakespeare is going on about in Sonnet 95. So we start with, how sweet and lovely dost thou make the shame, which like a canker in the fragrant rose doth spot the beauty of thy budding name! Exclamation mark. He's fuming. So here he's saying, how lovely you make this shame that you have, this cheating, I think he's getting at really. You make it seem so sweet on the outside, but actually it's like a worm infecting a rose, and it's staining the beauty of your name. This shame is staining the beauty of your name. But you're just sat there smiling, oh, look at me, I'm lovely, aren't I a great guy? But there's this infection inside, and it's eating away at you. Hell of a start to a poem, that. If that doesn't grab you, I don't know what will. Then we continue with, oh, in what sweets dost thou thy sins enclose! Exclamation mark again. 2 exclamation marks in the first 4 lines. You can tell he's angry. So here he's saying you cover up your sins with a sweet veneer. Again, it's that you present like a lovely guy, but actually there's all this horrible stuff that you're doing. These really are the worst people, aren't they? The ones that have that sort of lovely, charming... I mean, we've all met them. The lovely, charming, charismatic person that actually you find out down the line that they're a real piece of work and an arsehole. It's interesting to hear that those people were still about 500 years ago, isn't it? That tongue that tells the story of thy days, making lascivious comments on thy sport, cannot dispraise, but in a kind of praise. So this is an interesting one. And here he's saying even the person that tells tales about your reckless pleasures, you know, your sexual escapades really, even that person who's sort of slagging you off in a way, sort of saying, oh, did you know that actually behind his lover's back he's doing all these sort of things and it's not great, they can't help but turn their criticisms into praise, their dispraise into praise. And here I really imagine someone sort of down the pub with a few lagers telling a tale about their mate who's cheating on their partner, and in the way that they're telling it, it actually sounds kind of cool. But you know that what they're doing is wrong and evil. But in the telling of it, you're like, wow, that guy, wow. Isn't he a smooth operator? That's what I'm imagining is going on here. So even when you try to describe him as a bad person, he's coming off well. It's bloody annoying, isn't it? Then just to cap that off, he says, naming thy name blesses an ill report. So that's really a similar thought, but here he's just saying mentioning your name makes bad actions seem good, actually. Like having an affair. But when you're involved, it seems kind of cool. It's like James Bond. Oh, what a mansion have those vices got, which for their habitation chose out thee, where beauty's veil doth cover every blot, and all things turn to fair that eyes can see! Exclamation mark again. So that's quite a big chunk, but it's all one long thought, really. And here he's saying all of your vices have found this amazing home within you. And they're there to stay, baby. So all these vices that Shakespeare's lover has, they turned up with their suitcases inside Shakespeare's lover. Maybe in his stomach or something. Or in his heart, probably, really. And pop down their stuff, settled in. What's there? You've got the vice of cheating. You've probably got some violent vices, maybe. Two-faced vice, he's there, and they're all just having a cup of tea, settled down, and they're there to stay. And then he says your beauty is acting as a veil. So he's bringing in his lover's looks here and how that factors in, because he's saying your beauty is acting as a veil that covers up the bad things you do. And he's talked about this in previous sonnets as well, how beauty can be a mask for bad things and how you can get away with so much. And I think I mentioned it before in another sonnet podcast, that we still get this today, don't we? Hot, sexy people get away with a lot. We forgive them, don't we? All these movie stars that you hear about doing bad things, about, horrible stuff, and they just sort of, there's a bit of an uproar at the start, and then it's just fine a couple of months later, because I think everyone's just a bit like, well, they are still hot, they are good to look at, aren't they? And that is what's happening here in 95. It's a tale as old as time. Take heed, dear heart, of this large privilege. The hardest knife ill used doth lose his edge. So here he's saying, take heed, actually. Watch out, be careful, my love. Dear heart. I like dear heart. We should bring back dear heart. That's a good one. Just saying, hey, dear heart, you all right? What are you up to today? Okay, goodbye, dear heart. It's nice. We should bring that one back. If we all start doing that, everyone that's listening, if we all start bringing that into our lives, we might get it to spread, and in a couple of years, everyone will be using dear heart again. That'd be nice. Anyway, I digress. So be careful of the privilege that beauty gives you, the privilege you have of this sweet, lovely exterior, because even the sharpest knife grows dull if misused. So think about that. If you don't take care of this knife, quite a weird analogy to use, I'd say. I don't know if that's particularly relatable, but I think what he's getting at is, you got to treat your knife right. You got to sharpen that thing. You got to use it well. You can't chop badly with a knife. You can't scrape it across the chopping board. That'll make it grow dull really quickly. And in the same way, don't have sex with loads of other people behind my back, because that's gonna backfire at some point. Is he talking about impotence or something? Is he saying if you have sex loads, if you use that knife all the time, misuse it and abuse it, then it'll grow dull like your sex drive? Is that? No, that's crazy. That might be a bit of a crazy take. If you're studying this, don't take my word for that. That's just a wild little take there. So there we have it, Sonnet 95, and I'd say one of the simpler ones to dissect, which I like. It's nice when they're easy, when he's not talking about random Greek gods that none of us have heard of. So let's see how this fits into our little story. And if you remember last week, Shakespeare had taken Christopher Marlowe to Vauxhall Gardens. Christopher Marlowe, of course, Shakespeare's lover, but Shakespeare's obviously fuming at him at the moment because he's sort of having this affair with a maitre d' from a restaurant that they went to, and obviously that's not a great thing. And he's probably having more affairs, if we're being honest. So he's taken him to Vauxhall Gardens, and he's written this sonnet that is all about how flowers can just sort of get infected and then become as beautiful as a common weed. And he wanted to show Christopher Marlowe the flowers as he was talking about them and pick out particular ones and go, look at that one. That was probably really lovely, that flower once, but now look at it. And that's like you. You're lovely, but there's a darkness and there's all this cheating going on, and that's horrible. And he actually starts Sonnet 95 with a similar analogy, doesn't he? He brings in plants and being infected again. So let's see how Sonnet 94 goes down and how Sonnet 95 fits into all this. Shakespeare finishes reading Sonnet 94 to Christopher Marlowe in Vauxhall Gardens. Marlowe says, Shakespeare, I know what you're getting at. What you're saying is I'm like one of these flowers that's all beautiful, but I've got a rotten interior. I get it. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. I think I've got... I don't want to say it out loud, but I think I've got a sex addiction. and I don't know what to do about it. And he starts weeping. Shakespeare can't help but go over to him and hug him and hold him. I'm sorry, Shakespeare, it's actually really hard to be this good looking because everyone just wants to have sex with you. And I sort of feel an obligation to do it, if you know what I mean. And Shakespeare says, yeah, I think I get it. I think I get it. Well, look, there's therapists that you can go to for this. There's these group sessions that people go to that's apparently really useful, where everyone talks about their addiction. So maybe that could be something that you look into. Christopher Marlowe says, of course. You know what, I'll find one tonight. I'll go to one tonight, I promise you, Shakespeare. I will make this better. I will be a better person. There's goodness within me. They kiss amongst the flowers. It's quite beautiful. Has Christopher Marlowe finally turned over a new leaf? Later that day, Marlowe says to Shakespeare, "Oh, by the way, I found a therapy group to go to. They're all meeting tonight, so I'm going to go along and say hi and explain my situation." Shakespeare says, "That's amazing news, Marlowe. I'm so proud of you for doing that. Well done, you." Marlowe says, "Thank you, Shakespeare. It's about time I did this. Thank you for pointing out the error of my ways." Shakespeare says, "It's my pleasure. I love you." "I love you too, Shakespeare." And with that, he pops on his hat and leaves the house. Shakespeare is feeling warm and fuzzy inside. He's finally got through to Christopher Marlowe. He thinks, you know what? I'm going to go to the pub to celebrate, have a couple of pints, and have a good old time. Maybe a little sing-song. So he pops on his coat and heads down to the Nag's Head. He sits in his favourite spot, drinking a lovely dark ale, a new one that they have on tap. And he starts listening to the conversation of the lads at the bar next to him. And one of them's saying, "Oh my God, did you see Marlowe in here earlier? I can't believe it. Yeah, he was all over that guy." "I know. Yeah." "Yeah, and then he left with him. Can you believe it? I thought he was in a relationship." Shakespeare's ears prick up. They can't be talking about Christopher Marlowe, can they? He was meant to be at his therapist group. He's meant to be talking about his troubles with sex addiction. Shakespeare interjects and says, "Excuse me, you're not talking about Christopher Marlowe, are you?" And the man said, "Oh yeah, Christopher Marlowe, he was in here earlier with the man. They were all over each other. He's a right one, that Marlowe. Absolutely gorgeous. I wish I could get as much sex as him." Shakespeare can't believe what he's hearing. He finishes his pint. He knows exactly where Christopher Marlowe will be. He runs and runs through the streets to the maitre d's house. And as he runs, he writes. He knows the sonnet that he will write, and it's going to be an angry one. He might even put some exclamation marks in. Take that, Marlowe. Eventually, in a sweaty mess, he arrives at the maitre d's house. And Christopher Marlowe is just leaving. He says, "Oh, hello, Shakespeare. What are you doing here?" Shakespeare said, "I know where you've been. I know what you've been doing." And Marlowe says, No, Shakespeare. In here, what you thought I was doing something wrong. No, in here, that's where the group is. That's where the therapy session is." And Shakespeare says, "You think I'm an idiot? I know who's in there." And Christopher Marlowe says, "There's no one in there, Shakespeare." And he smiles his lovely smile and slicks back his gorgeous head of hair. "Shakespeare, you've got it all wrong." And at that moment, the door opens again and the maitre d' pops his head out and says, "Oh, Marlowe, sorry, you left your hat in here, mate. Can't wait to do this again sometime." And then closes the door. Marlowe guiltily looks back at Shakespeare. Shakespeare, with tears in his eyes, pulls out Sonnet 95 and says, "Listen to me, Marlowe, because this might be the last bloody sonnet I ever read to you." Sonnet 95. How sweet and lovely you make the shame that, like a worm infecting a rose, is staining the beauty of your name. Oh, you cover up your sins with a sweet veneer. Even the person that tells tales about your reckless pleasures can't help but turn their criticisms into praise. Just mentioning your name makes bad actions seem good. Oh, what a home your vices have found, choosing you as their habitation. Your beauty acts as a veil that covers up every bad thing you do. But be careful, my love, of the privilege beauty gives you. Even the sharpest knife grows dull if misused. Wow, wow, wow. Is this the end of Christopher Marlowe and Shakespeare's relationship? Find out next week on the final couplet. Until then,